Ox and
Yay.
46A. Let's see if what was happening just
Pages
before.
said,
Ac I mean, it doesn't look like too much was missed from whatever was before.
and we were okay.
But if an ox is entirely rendered forewarned, you do not find an element of innocuousness with regard to it at all.
Okay.
If it is forewarned with regard to goring with either horn, its status of innocuous is completely revoked.
Okay. The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Eliezer says, an ox has no sufficient safeguarding at all other than slaughtering it with a knife. That's awful. Rabbah said, what is the reason for the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer? As it is as the verse states with regard to a forewarned ox, and the owner has not secured it, meaning that once it is rendered forewarned, the owner no longer has any sufficient manner of safeguarding this animal, and the owner is responsible for all damages it causes.
So the minute it gores someone else, you should knife it, I guess.
Okay, but haven't we already heard stories about if an ox was forewarned and we knew it? Then so like people haven't done that. Like we know that in the past that people haven't done that. They
Yeah,
haven't
like
killed
they
the horses
haven't
for
killed
that.
it because obviously it's still alive and been forewarned.
Right.
Abaye said to Rabbah, if that is so, does that which is written with regard to a pit, and if a man shall open a pit, or if a man shall dig a pit and not cover it, also mean that once a pit has been dug, the owner no longer has any adequate way of covering this pit, which would exempt its owner from paying damages?
And if you would say that indeed that is the halacha, but didn't we learn in Mishnah 52a that if he covered the pit appropriately and an ox or donkey fell into it and died, he is exempt? Evidently, a pit can be covered adequately.
They're just being silly. Rather, Abaye rejected Rabbah's explanation of Rabbi Eliezer's
I think
opinion
that's probably a good idea.
and said that this is the reason for the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. As it is taught in a Baraita that Rabbi Natan says, from where is it derived that one may not raise a vicious dog in his house, and that one may not set up an unstable ladder in his house? As it is stated, you shall not bring blood into your house, which means that one may not allow a hazardous situation to remain in his house. Similarly, a person should not keep a forewarned ox in his possession, as it is dangerous. This is why Rabbi Eliezer rules that no level of safeguarding is sufficient for it. The ox should be slaughtered so that it will not cause damage. This makes me think of pit bulls and like all the controversy around them.
Right.
Like the minute
I
they
love
bite someone, they're supposed to go down.
So is a pit bull a forewarned ox is the question.
Well,
Ah,
like vicious dog, I guess, according to some.
that's awful. Pit bulls are nice. Okay. Mishnah. In the case of an innocuous ox that gored and killed a cow, and the cow's fetus was found dead at its side, and it is not known whether the cow gave birth before the ox gored it, and the fetus's death is unrelated to the goring, or whether it gave birth after and the ox gored it, and the fetus died on account of the goring, the owner of the ox pays half the cost of the damage for the cow and 1/4 of the cost of the damage for the offspring. Since it is uncertain whether the ox was responsible for the death of the fetus, in which case he would pay half the damages, its owner pays only half the amount for the fetus that he would ordinarily be required to pay 1/4.
Okay. That's some win for the person with the ox.
I guess.
And likewise, there is uncertainty in the case of an innocuous cow that gored an ox, and the cow's newborn offspring was found at its side, dead or alive. I don't think a cow that just gave birth is going to be goring anyone. And it is not known whether the cow gave birth before it gored the ox or whether the cow gave birth after it gored. When damage is caused by an innocuous animal, the liability of the owner is limited to the value of the animal that gored. Therefore, half the cost of the damage is paid from the value of the cow, and as is in the standard case of an innocuous animal. And if that does not suffice to pay for half the cost of the damage, 1/4 of the cost of the damage is paid from the offspring. Since it is uncertain whether the offspring was part of the cow at the time the cow gored, the owner pays only half of what he would pay if it were certain that it was part of the cow.
Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda says that Shmuel says this ruling of the Mishnah is the statement of Sumachos, who says property of uncertain ownership is divided by the two parties. But the rabbis say that this is the significant principle of monetary law. The burden of proof rests upon the claimant, and the disputed sum is not divided. According to the rabbis, in the cases of uncertainty in the Mishnah, no payment is made for the fetus or from the offspring, respectively.
Case of uncertainty. The Gemara asks, why do I need for the rabbis to say the words, this is the significant principle of monetary law? Why not just state the principle? The Gemara answers, it was necessary to say them because even in a case where the injured party states, I am certain that such and such occurred, and the one liable for the damage says, perhaps it was otherwise, without definitively refuting the claim against him, the burden of proof rests upon the claimant. Although the injured party claims with certainty that he is correct, and the defendant's claim is only speculative, the defendant claim still does not render the defendant liable to pay, absent proof.
Alternatively, the phrase, this is significant principle of monetary law, was necessary for instances such as this, as it was stated in the case of one who sells an ox to another and the ox is found to be one that habitually gores. Rav says that this is considered to be a mistaken transaction since the purchaser can claim that he bought the ox specifically for labor and an ox that gores is not suitable for such a task. And Shmuel says the seller may say to him, I sold it to you for slaughter, and the fact that it gores is immaterial. Uh-oh.
The Gemara asks, why are Rav and Shmuel speculating about the purpose of the sale? But let us simply see if the purchaser is a person who buys oxen for plowing or a person who buys oxen for slaughter. The Gemara answers, no, it is necessary for them to engage in a dispute in the case of a person who buys oxen for both this and for that reason, and in the instance it was unclear for which purpose it was intended. So always know what you're buying.
Yes,
Ask
and
questions.
important. The Gemara asks, but let us see what the purchase price was. If you paid the price of an ox fit for plowing, which is a large amount of money, then it can be assumed that it was intended for plowing. But if you paid the price of an ox for slaughtering, which is a much smaller amount, it can be assumed that it was sold for slaughtering.
You should know what you're buying based on the price. The Gemara answers, no, it is necessary for them to engage in a dispute in a case where the cost of meat rose and the ox
Oh,
purchased for slaughtering stands at the same price as an ox purchased for plowing. So inflation. In that
yes, this
case,
could happen. Supply and demand.
Rav and Shmuel dispute whether the purchaser can claim that the transaction was made in error, or whether the seller can claim that he sold it to be slaughtered, and the purchaser must provide proof for his claim. So again, talk to people, communicate.
The sages said, kidding. But if the loss to the purchaser cannot be reimbursed from the purchasing money by returning it, if the seller spent it already, let the purchaser take the ox itself in lieu of the money, as people say. Allow yourself to be repaid by your debtors, even in brand, since anything may be used as payment for a debt. In the event that the seller has no money with which to reimburse the purchaser, even if it is a mistaken transaction, the result may be that the purchaser keeps the ox in lieu of having the money returned. Accordingly, there would be no practical difference between the opinions of Rav and Shmuel.
Okay. The Gemara answers, no, it is necessary for them to engage in a dispute in a case where the seller does not have sufficient funds from which to repay the purchaser, and the purchaser demands that his money be returned as opposed to keeping the ox as payment.
The Gemara now explains the logic of Rav and Shmuel. Rav says that this is a case of mistaken transaction due to the principle. Follow the majority, and the majority of people buy oxen for plowing. And Shmuel says the seller can say to him, I sold it to you for slaughtering, and we do not follow the majority in this case. When do we follow the majority according to Shmuel? Only in determining the prohibited or permitted status of an item. But in monetary matters such as this, we do not follow the majority. Rather, the operative principle is the burden of proof rests upon the claimant.
The majority of people buy oxen for plow. Okay, I see what they mean by okay. That which Rav Yehuda stated above, the Mishnah follows the opinion of Sumachos, is also taught in a Baraita. In the case of an ox that gores a cow and its fetus is found dead at its side, and he does not know whether it gave birth before the ox gored it or it gave birth after the ox gored it, the owner of the ox pays half the cost of the damage for the cow and 1/4 of the cost of the damage for the offspring. This is the statement of Sumachos. The rabbis say the burden of proof rests upon the claimant.
Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani said, from where is it derived that the burden of proof rests upon the claimant? As it is stated in the Torah when Moses appointed Aaron and Hur to judge the people, whoever has a cause, let him come near to them. Yigash. This is interpreted to mean that whoever has a claim against another should submit, yagish, proof to them. According to the interpretation, this verse demonstrates clearly that the claimant is responsible for supplying the proof.
Nice. Rav Ashi objects to this. Why do I need a verse to derive this? It is based on logical reasoning that one who suffers from pain goes to the doctor. Says here the individual with the problem has the responsibility to resolve it, so too someone with a claim against another must bring a proof to corroborate his claim.
Rather, the verse is needed for that which Rav Nachman says. Um, Rabba bar Avu says, as Rav Nachman says, that Rabba bar Avu says, from where is it derived that a court first attends only the arguments of the claimant and only afterward attends to the counterclaims of the defendant and to discuss them? As it is stated, whoever has a cause, let him come near Yigash to them, which is interpreted to mean that whoever has a claim against another should submit Yagish his claim to them first before the defendant.
The verse is needed for that. Um, a court first attends only to the arguments of the claimant. Okay. So it's still basically the same thing. He's just like, I don't need a verse to tell me that this is right. I'm just saying this is what happens in real life.
Right.
The
like this is what
sages,
you should do. So why do I need this to be told to me?
yeah. The sages of Nahar say that despite this principle, sometimes a court attends to the defendant first and listens to his defense before discussing the arguments of the claimant. I've never heard that before. What are the circumstances where this occurs? This occurs in a case where his assets are depreciating because of the claim against him. In that situation, the court allows him to present his arguments first so that he can sell his assets at their true price. I wonder if people still do that today.
Yeah. The Mishnah teaches, and likewise, in the case of a cow that gored an ox and the cow's newborn offspring was subsequently found at its side, half the cost of the damage is paid from the cow and 1/4 of the cost of the damage is paid from the offspring. The Gemara asks, the Mishnah's wording the Mishnah's wording indicates that the owner of the cow pays half the cost of the damage and an additional 1/4 of the cost of the damage, thereby amounting to 3/4 of the cost of the damage. This is difficult to understand as he is required to pay only half the cost of the damage since the ox is innocuous. If the Mishnah states that he pays 3/4 of the cost of the damage, what is its purpose?
Abaye said the phrase half the cost of the damage actually means 1/4 of the cost of the damage.
Oh, good.
Since there are two animals that may have accomplices in the incident, the owner of the cow pays only half of the normal amount from the value of the cow, 1/4 of the cost of the damage. The other half of the payment, which is 1/4 of the cost of the damage, should be paid from the value of the newborn, who is the accomplice of the cow. Yet,
Wow.
wow, it's like already on a life of crime just out of the womb. Like, yet, due to the uncertainty of whether it was born before the goring or afterward, only half of that amount is paid from it, which is 1/8 of the cost of the damage. Therefore, the owner of the ox receives a total of 3/8 of the cost of the damage. So they're completely changing things and getting really specific now.
Yeah. The Gemara asks, but if the cow and the offspring are owned by one person, the injured party can indeed say to the owner of the cow, whichever way you look at it, give me half the cost of the damage, either from the value of the cow or the newborn, which both belong to you. Why is it necessary to give half of the payment specifically from the cow and half from the newborn? Rather, this ruling of the Mishnah is not necessary, except for the case where the cow belongs to one person and the offspring to another, so that each can claim that he only is partially responsible for the damage.
I guess you could do that. You could buy a calf before it's even born.
Yeah, but that's kind of weird.
Just
I mean,
like,
you can, because we've talked about how you're allowed to
yeah, like I'm thinking of that tulip speculation thing of like the 1400s or whatever that was, the
right,
Pearl Harbors, everything. People buying
yes.
tulips before they were even bloomed. The Gemara asks, but even if this is the case, in this case, if the injured party came forward and claimed payment from the owner of the cow first, he can indeed say to the owner of the cow, "Your cow certainly caused damage to my property, so bring me proof that you have a partner." The owner of the cow would then have to prove that the newborn calf was still a fetus at the time and therefore a partner in the incident in order to exempt himself from paying the entire payment of half the cost of the damage. I
Really
need
fun.
proof that you have a partner.
Rather, the case of the Mishnah is one where he claimed payment from the owner of the offspring first, as in the case of the owner of the cow can say to him, since you claimed payment from the owner of the newborn, you thereby disclosed your opinion on the matter, that I have a partner who is responsible for paying part of the damage. Therefore, I am not prepared to pay the full amount required, half the cost of the damage, but only half of that amount, i.e. 1/4. That's funny.
The person looked at the two and they were like, "You, baby calf, you're the one that definitely gored my ox." From there, There are those who say even though the injured party came forward and claimed payment from the owner of the cow first, the latter can dismiss his claim as he can say to him, I know that I have a partner in this matter, the owner of the newborn calf. So the person being accused can dismiss it.
Rava said in challenging Abaya's explanation, is that to say that the Mishnah teaches 1/4 of the cost of the damage and 1/8 of the cost of the damage. The Mishnah teaches half the cost of the damage and 1/4 of the cost of the damage. Rather, Rava said, actually, the Mishnah is referring to a case where the cow and its offspring belong to one person. And this is what we're saying. The halacha is that with regard to the damage caused by an innocuous animal, restitution is paid only from the money realized by selling the belligerent animal. Therefore, if the cow is here, half the cost of the damage is paid from the value of the cow itself.
Okay.
Great. We did it.
So half will always be coming from one or the other, is what it sounds like.
Yes.
Even if that includes an extra quarter because of a baby. Okay.
I like that the fetus is an accomplice. I think this is my favorite takeaway from this.
That you'll always get money no matter what?
No, that the fetus is an accomplice.
Oh.
That's really funny.
I know. Or that somebody would look at it and think, you're the one that killed it. You're the one that killed my ox. Or gored it. I guess it didn't die yet. I don't know. Thank you. Okay. Bye.